Okay, for the last video on factoring here, we have factor completely if it's possible. So we have a cubed b to the, kind of looks like an I, supposed to be a 4/4 m minus a m cubed n squared. So the first thing you want to do is always see if you have a greatest common factor, because then it'll make life easier. So that's the first thing you want to check. So I've got an a cubed and an a, so I can take out an a. I have a b to the 4th I can't do anything with. I have an m and an m cubed, so I can take out an m. And then I have n squared that I can't do anything with. So this just makes it a little bit easier as far as looking at exponents go. So if I factor out am, a cubed, I've taken out a, I've got 2 left. The b to the 4th will stay, and I've factored the m out, so it's gone. A is gone, so that's gone. M cubed, I factored out an m, so I've got 2 left, and the n squared stays. So now if you'll notice, I've got a squared b to the 4th minus m squared n squared. So that is a difference of squares, because just like we were saying in the last video, if you have a something squared minus something else squared, a squared minus b squared is always a minus b times a plus b. So this right here is a difference of squares. So now I can factor it by saying, okay, it's a minus b times a plus b. So I would have a squared is a, and then b to the 4th is a b squared squared, right? So let me write that over here. So I've got am times a squared b squared squared minus m squared n squared. So you could even also write this, if it makes it easier for you to see, you could write that as ab squared squared minus mn squared. Okay, so you have these even exponents you can write as squares, because when you have a power to a power, you just multiply. So b squared squared is to the 4th. So ab squared squared is a squared b to the 4th, and mn squared is m squared n squared. So this I'm plugging in for a, and this I'm plugging in for b in this formula basically. So I would have a b squared minus, and I always write minus first instead of plus usually, just out of habit, but you can write plus first if you want to, minus mn times a b squared plus mn. And you can check it. ab squared times ab squared is a squared b to the 4th. ab squared times positive mn is ab squared mn. And then you've got the minus that, minus mn times ab squared, so these cancel. And then minus mn times mn is minus m squared n squared. So it does work out. So now I'm done. I can't factor that any further. So that was another one, using difference of squares. Sometimes it's not obvious that that's what you want to do, but like I said, if you have something like this where it's a minus and they're all even exponents, you can write it as a square. So for 27, we have a squared b to the 4th minus 16 y to the 4th. So again, this is all even exponents, and 16 is 4 squared. So if it helps you to see it, this is a b squared squared. That first term, because it's a squared, so there's a squared. B to the 4th is b squared squared, b to the 4th. Minus the square root of 16 is 4, and then you've got y to the 4th, so y squared squared. So 4 squared is 16, and y squared squared is y to the 4th. So it might make it simpler if you write it that way, because now again I'm using this formula. I'm plugging this in for a and this in for b. So I've got ab squared minus 4y squared times ab squared plus 4y squared. And again, if you check it, it will check out. If I have x to the 8th, and you have difference in sum of cubes as well, but we're not going to get into all that for this course, just because it takes up even more time. So we have a shortened summer course, but there is such thing as a difference in sum of cubes if you ever run across one. But anyway, so x to the 8th minus y squared, again, it's even exponents, so this is x to the 4th squared, because 4 times 2 is 8, and then minus, of course, y squared is just there. So this would be x to the fourth minus y times x to the fourth plus y. And if you check it, x to the fourth times x to the fourth, you add the exponents, it's x to the eighth. Plus x to the fourth y minus x to the fourth y, they cancel, and then minus y times y is minus y squared. Okay, so for the last difference of squares one, we've got ab cubed minus a cubed b. So when you first look at this one, it's not obvious that it's going to be a difference of squares, so you've got to factor out your greatest common factor first. So I've got an a and an a cubed, so I can factor out an a. I've got a b cubed and a b, so I can factor out a b. And I'm left with, if I factor ab out of ab cubed, I'm left with a b squared minus a cubed b, I'm left with an a squared. So there's your difference of squares. So I've got ab times b minus a times b plus a. Again, you can check it and it will check. So now we want to get into factoring. Most people use guess and check, which is fine. So if you have a trinomial and you want to factor it, then you can use guess and check. Typically speaking, if the first number, if the leading coefficient here is a 1 or a prime number, I'll use guess and check. If it's something larger, I'll do it another way, which I'll show you in just a second. But if you have a trinomial and you want to factor it, to get x squared, you have to do x times x. Like, that's your only option. There is no other way to do x squared, right? So you got x times x. Now, when you do first, outer, inner, last, you've got your first, and then you do your outer and your inner, and those are added together, and then your last get multiplied together. So what I want to do is figure out what numbers go in here that would multiply to give me an 8, but add up to give me a 6. So an option would be I could try plus 1 plus 8 and see if that works. So I've got x squared, I've got 8x plus x, that's 9x. So no, that's not going to work. So try something else. And if all of these are positive, then all of these will have to be positive as well. So I've got, if I try 4 and 2 and see if that works. I've got x times x is x squared, and I've got plus 2x plus 4x is plus 6x, and 4 times 2 is 8. So that is what works. So that is using the guess and check method, which is fine. You can use the guess and check method. So I've got y squared minus 5y plus 6. So again, to get y squared, I have to do y times y. And if I've got this a positive, but this is a negative, that means the two numbers I'm multiplying have to multiply to a positive, so they both have to be negative, and then add to a negative. So the two factors that multiply to a positive 6, but add to a negative 5 would be negative 3 and negative 2. Again, check it, y squared minus 2y minus 3y gives me minus 5y, minus 3 times minus 2 gives me positive 6. If I have a squared plus a minus 6. Again, to get a squared, I have to do a times a. And now this time I want to add up to a positive but multiply to a negative. So one has to be negative and one has to be positive. Otherwise it doesn't work. Factors of 6 that would add up to a positive 1. If I've got one positive, one negative, I would have 3 and 2. So a squared minus 2a plus 3a gives me plus a, and 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. So for when you're doing guess and check, sometimes you just have to play around with it and mess with it until it works. So for this one, I've got y squared minus 4y minus 32. So again, I have to do y times y. If I want to multiply to a negative and add to a negative, then again, one has to be negative, one has to be positive. It doesn't matter which one you write first. But anyways, so 8 and 4 multiply to 32, and I'll add up to 4 if I do add up to a negative 4 if I do a negative 8 and a positive 4. So I've got y squared plus 4y minus 8y gives me minus 4y, and then negative 32. Okay, For this one, the leading coefficient's not 1, but it's prime, so the only thing to do is to do 3x times x because it's prime. Your c is also prime, so you can only do 1 times 1. So if this doesn't work, it can't be factored. So 3x times x is 3x squared, plus 3x plus x is plus 4x, and then plus 1, so it does work. And so now just to show you one that's a little bit different that you can do by grouping if you so choose. Now this one probably wouldn't be too bad to do if you wanted to do guess and check. 16a squared you've got, but the problem is you'd have 16a times a, 2a times 8a, 4a times 4a, you know, all those options. So what I do is I take this number times this number. So 16 times 3 is 48. And then you list factors of 48. So you've got these factors. And this is all of them here. Oh, you can see it. And so you look and see, okay, which ones add up to this middle term here? So which ones add up to the middle term? So 4 and 12 add to 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this as 16a squared plus 4a plus 12a plus 3. So I haven't really changed the problem because 16a is 4a and 12a, that's true. And then I'm going to factor by grouping. So out of this group, I'm going to take out a 4a. I'm left with 4a plus 1. And then out of this group, I take out a 3, and I'm left with 4a plus 1. And then these are the same, so I can factor that out, just like we were doing on grouping. And I'm left with 4a plus 3. So if the number here is not a 1 or a prime and you've got several options, I'll usually do it this way, but you can still do guess and check and just fiddle with it until it works. That's fine as well. And if you check this, 4a times 4a is 16a squared, 4a times 3 is 12a, plus 4a is 16a, and then 1 times 3 is 3. So that's a neat little trick I like to do, just if you think it's going to take you too long to do guess and check. It can be faster sometimes. So this is it for factoring. So you'll answer the last questions and we'll be done with this section.